All right. We are live on YouTube as well, and we are live on IG. All right, folks. If you haven't clicked over, definitely click over to our YouTube. The link is in the bio. You got to kind of search for us a little bit, but you will find us. Today's topic kind of came to me a couple of days ago with all the debate going on with, just everything happening in 2021. 2021 has been a very interesting year, a lot of good, a lot of bad. But a lot of identity politics have been taking place in 2021. And if any of you are on Clubhouse, you pretty much can attest to the fact that, there's always a stigma against gender roles. And we kind of want to address that right now in the room, just because I think, this is a family and we can kind of talk to each other about things like this. But how it impacts your actual financial plans, that's kind of what I want to get into tonight. Because it's one thing to know what roles each person can play in a relationship. It's another thing to know how to fill in the gaps and how that's going to affect your finances going forward. So this is going to be a very spicy subject. I definitely am going to be keeping my eyes in the chat because I want everyone to kind of participate in this. And I know that there may have a lot of opinions, and I want to make sure we get to all of them. So if you're not following us on YouTube, please do. I'm about to share my screen. We're going to go through a couple of windows here, and I just want everyone to be on the same page and on one accord. So let's go over here, share this, and we are gonna get going. All right, so we are The Way. Our organization is called The Way. It's a nonprofit. We strategize in 3 different areas: philanthropy, relationships, and financial literacy. And in the beginning of The Way, and the reason why we designed it the way we did was because we wanted it to have aspects of feminine and masculine, as well as a little bit of in between. And if you think about it, financial literacy for the longest time was a very male-dominated industry and access point. I'll ask any of the women in the chat right now, when was the first time that someone sat down with you and told you what a stock was? You can just put in the chat, like what age did anyone tell you what a stock was? What age did anyone tell you what an investment strategy would look like, a portfolio or a mutual fund? When was that described to you? Most of the women that I speak to, they never hear about these things until they're working and they're literally within their careers. And from there, they're like, oh, wow, okay, so that's what that is. They really don't really get an access to what finance really is, because as little girls growing up, they're taught to learn how to be kind to other people, learn how to play with friends, learn how to be, feminine. So learn how to play with dolls, learn how to, make believe and have a little cooking. It's like all of these things that little girls are taught, and even little boys are taught to be, in sports and to be aggressive. And this is, again, the gender. This is what society puts on the genders of little boys and little girls. In 2021, however, we have a very good revolution going, where these roles are not just for specific genders, but for both parties within the relationship. And I like the way that is moving, because it requires for both parties to understand that they both have a role to play in every aspect of the relationship. So where in the past, before 2021, it was a man's job to provide for his family, to be the breadwinner, to, bring home the bacon, so to speak. We don't talk about pigs in here, so let's not say the bacon. So be the breadwinner. And women's roles were to nurture the household and to raise the children and all that other stuff. See, in today's society, it's like men can raise kids too. Women can go to work and pay for mortgages. Like, it's no longer taboo, and it's no longer, denied for them to have access to certain things. And that, to me, is the beautiful thing about 2021. We have to look at the blessings and look at, that we still have work to do, but things are in a better space. So let's get into the spicy subject that we have for tonight, because I want to make sure that we get into it. So it says in the title, we discuss the pros and cons with real life examples, the difference between, let me just close that out. The difference between why society still uses pro-modern relationship. Critics will say that that gender roles are no longer important. I'll start off by saying my personal belief. I believe that there is a place for gender roles, but only in the aspect of your specific relationship. So, for example, every relationship's about kind of like finding that perfect blend, right? So, if you're a very aggressive person, whether it's a man or a woman, if you find another aggressive person to be with you, they might compliment you if you can both handle it, but you might be doing a lot of this, might be a lot of fighting, because aggressive and aggressive, sometimes, opposites attract. Well, like sometimes collide. And as long as you can handle the emotional intelligence to deal with a relationship like that, you'll be fine. So it's not really about the gender role, more so about the characteristics of each gender. I think actually has more weight than the actual gender itself. And let's get into that so we can get into like where I want to go with this. So here are some, if you're on our YouTube, you'll actually see what I'm doing. If you're not, I can't help. Actually, I can't help you. Hold on. I'm going to help you here. Hold on. I'm going to pull up the same thing I have on YouTube. I'm going to pull it up here. Okay, check out this. All right. So masculine and feminine. And this is from a CPA, CFP by the name of Ellen Rogen. Her website is ellenrogen.com. She's a financial advisor. I like looking at advisors and utilizing some of the things that they talk about because, again, they're very relevant. They speak on the things that I do believe are, the most important parts. And it's just easy for you to kind of get access. I think a part of what we do here is give you the tools to not only take on what we're saying, but research it for yourself. I also tell people, don't believe what I say. Look into it yourself. Take the notes from these conversations and apply it and see what happens. So this goes into the different types of strength. So for the record, and this is what she says, I don't usually believe that money is more male or female. Money is more they, them than he, him, or she, her. However, adding some feminine to the mix will help change a lot. So she's going into the different types of things that money can be. So the masculine energy is logical, confident, focused, strong, stable, clear, assertive, goal-driven. The feminine qualities are intuitive, generous, nurturing, creative, collaborative, caring, receptive, and grateful. Now, can you see why it's important for both men and women to have both of these traits? Like, imagine as a man, if you're a cis man, which is a man that, is a man on the outside and identifies as a man and likes women, right? So heterosexual man, called cis men. If you're that type of person, being intuitive is important. Like, why would you not want to be intuitive? Why would you not want to be generous? Why would you not want to be nurturing? Like, these are all qualities that are associated with the feminine energy, but why can't you as a man encourage yourself to be more intuitive, to be more caring, to be more collaborative and receptive and grateful? Those are good qualities. And I think for a woman, same thing. You're telling me that, being logical is a masculine trait? I know very logical women. My wife is a logical woman. Like, that's not something that is defined gender-wise as a man's characteristic. So for me, I feel like when we talk about these gender roles, it's really important to move the gender role thing aside and bring in the qualities. Because when we're talking about qualities, it's no longer about, man or woman. It's really about who is providing this level in the relationship or in your current life. Now, how does this play a role into finance? Because I'm going to connect all of these things into finance, and that's why this is going to be a really juicy topic. So let's look at it, right? Intuitive, the feminine energy for intuitive, right? An intuitive person in finance is someone who can see a stock that is floundering or not doing well, but knowing how the market is moving, investing like an economist, and is going to see that, hey, even though the stock is not good right now, it's going to be good in a couple of months. So let me jump on that. That's an intuitive person, someone who's naturally just looking at the way of the land and seeing, okay, things are moving in this direction, so I should move in this direction. Think of it this way. A lot of raw material costs are going up across the country, right? An intuitive person would have seen the cost at Home Depot and Lowe's and all these prices and say, I wonder which companies produce lumber and sell lumber. Maybe I should invest in those. That makes sense to me, because you're intuitively looking at what's happening around you and making a decision based on that. Those type of individuals are, whether they're men or women, that's an intelligent way to invest. When it comes to being generous, there is a thing that money does. When you give it away, it seems to come back tenfold. It's just a thing. I can't explain why it happens, but it does. So if you are looking at being generous and looking to give and looking to nurture as a woman or a man, those are the types of things when it comes to your investments and your savings. You have to set aside a goal for how much money you can have a lot to give. Like, how much are you going to allot to give to church, to give to the SPCA, to give to family members in need? These are all things that, regardless of masculine or feminine, they're important, right? So we've got to start looking at our relationships and our relationship goals and see which energies are we tapping into to accomplish them. Because I think that it should be a relationship goal for a couple to want to be caring, to want to be receptive, to be grateful. That's a relationship goal. To be goals driven. That's a relationship goal. To be assertive, stable, and clear. Those are relationship goals. So those are things that I think make a lot of sense. Now, I want to define some things for you. And I went to a website called Young Scott, the Young Scott card. Okay, so this is a Scotland website, and it goes into different types of gender identities and how you feel in a relationship, either being male or female. And I'm going to get to this very quickly. So there's different types. There's agender, bigender, cisgender, gender expression, gender fluid, gender queer, intersex, gender variant, mix, third gender, transgender, two-spirit, Z, and here. Okay. All of these, you can read these. I'm going to leave the website underneath this chat so you can kind of go into it. But the reason why I'm even looking at these terms is because the baseline for most of these terms always comes down to two charts and a deviation on two charts. Let me close this out real quick. Stop sharing. Okay. Usually, all of these different identity terms come down to a percentage of being either more of something or more of one thing or another, more of something or less of something, right? And typically the scale is usually femaleness and maleness. So when you're measuring gender expression, the scale is usually masculine and feminine. When you're measuring biological sex, that's just pretty much, again, maleness and femaleness. When you're measuring attracted to, that's measured on a scale of men, males, masculinity, and women, females, and femininity. And all of these things, all of these terms are different variances on the scale. The reason why I bring that up is because, again, in the LGBTQ plus community, all of these different genders are actual like groupings of themselves, and they have different characteristics that represent them. So for example, if we look at a gender variant, that's someone who either by nature or by choice does not conform to gender-based expectations of society, right? So they don't conform to being a man or a woman. They're called gender variant. Now, you might be gender variant, but you're still gonna have characteristics of one or the other. Because if I ask a gender variant person, hey, are you intuitive? Are you generous? Are you nurturing? As a gender variant person, are you collaborative? Are you caring? Are you receptive? Are you stable? Are you clear? Are you assertive? All of these qualities kind of transcend an identity because they're characteristics. They're not associated with any specific gender. They're associated with you as a person. And in a relationship, it's important to figure out what your part of the relationship is going to be. So in a traditional, man-woman relationship, most men take women out on the first date, right? That's typically what happens. And when that happens, most women say, okay, you can take me on a date. I'll be happy to go on a date with you. Boom. That's how it usually goes. Or if you're at a club with your friends, men or women, typically if you're women at the club, you might get drinks bought for you. You might get entry into different VIP sections for free. You might get free bottle service. All those types of things are available for women. Whereas for men, typically you're not going to get most of those things. You're pretty much providing those things to the woman you're trying to impress or the men you're trying to impress, depending on what your preferences are. In society, we see that as a man's role to provide, as a man's role to be financially responsible for situations. So if that's going to be your role as a man, it's important for you to then make sure that your finances are straight. You can't rely on your partner or the person that you're with to make sure that your finances are straight because you won't get a partner. You know how many women are out here that are going to be, CEOs of companies, Fortune 500 companies, super successful that don't really need you or your money? So to me, it's like if you're waiting on a woman to be the financial independent person that you're supposed to be as a man, you're going to be set back a little bit because it's going to be hard to find a partner that's going to want to partner with you when you don't have the basis for your specific part of the equation intact. It's similar to if you date a woman who isn't nurturing or caring or loving or compassionate and very aggressive and that's it. Like if you're looking to raise a family and you have a woman who doesn't know how to nurture because they were never taught that, or maybe they don't identify as a nurturer type of person, that might impact your ability to have a cohesive family unit. Because if you're not that way and in the feminine energy, she's not that way, that's going to be a problem for your team. So to me, it doesn't matter, what team we're talking about, if it's a man and woman, if it's a woman and woman, if it's a man and a man. There are qualities that both feminine and masculine need to be involved in all of the decisions, in all of the rearing of children, in all of the actual home safety and security. There are things that just need to have both those energies combined. That's just a thing. That's just the way it is. Now, I'm going to go to an article. And if you guys are on our StreamYard, you're going to get all the love because we are pulling up articles left and right about things. I want to show you guys a quick stat on women who are crushing it. Okay. And here are the traits that they have. So I'm going to pull this up now on StreamYard. Here we go. Add. You can't see that. I'm going to make it bigger. Okay. So this window shows masculine traits, feminine traits. Okay. And these are the positive aspects of both of them. And I want you guys to kind of narrow in on these characteristics, figure out which one is more you or more your partner. And then from there, I'm going to show you how to use these to create a financial plan that's going to make sense out of who's going to be what. Okay. Because step one, when you're looking at masculine traits and feminine traits, is figuring out who in the relationship has which one. Okay. So if you're the woman in a relationship and your partner is either a man or a woman, doesn't matter. Ask yourself, do you hold these traits? Are you compassionate and care for others? Collaborative, receptive and grateful, nurturer, relationship directed, intuitive, interdependence, multitask, patience, forgiving, temporal, focused on your needs, competitive, assertive, protector, goal-directed, rational, linear, logical, independent, monotask-oriented, bias for action, and spatial. See, all of these things are qualities that go into the masculine and feminine traits. They both are necessary, but sometimes the way that we're raised, we have a greater amount of one than the other. So for example, for myself, I have a lot of the collaborative feminine trait. And the reason why is because growing up with my family, we did a lot of things together. My siblings and I would play basketball together. Whenever we would go somewhere, it'd be our family together. So we'd pretty much be able to hang out together and just become really close. So we were always collaborating on things. So working in a group, working in team settings for me has been very easy because growing up with 4 siblings, it was easy to work with people. So now in my current occupation, I'm a director of operations. I work with the entire agency. So whoever's there, I'm working with them. And that's a part of what helps me to kind of work. But that's a feminine trait, according to this article. And then goal-directed, again, that's a masculine trait. Most men are taught to be goal-directed. Like if you want to make the basketball team, practice really hard. If you want to get that job, go in there and demand it. If you want to get that woman, ask her on a date, be goal-directed. That's something that we're taught as young boys. And women are taught that in a different way as well. Make sure that you are upstanding, make sure that you have a good education, make sure that you're going to school and getting your degrees, be goal directed. See, that's a masculine trait, but women also do that as well, right? So the goal is to figure out which one of these characteristics fall in line with you as a person, as an individual. And then ask yourself, where are my weak spots? What am I missing? Am I focused on my needs? Am I looking at my health? Am I looking at my wellness? Am I making sure to take a mental break? Like, am I making sure to do good by myself? That's a good thing, because when you meet someone else and if they're not caring about you, you better make sure that you can care for yourself. So that's a trait that, even though it's in the masculine side, women definitely have that, because a lot of women that I know are self-dependent. They don't need anybody. They just do what they need to do because they are focused on their needs and they make sure those are met. So as a man going into a situation like that, you want to make sure that you know how to focus on the needs of not yourself, but of others as well. To be collaborative, to be compassionate, right? So all of these things are part of it. What's going on, Tice? All right. So folks in the chat said, when were you taught about finances? And they said maybe 30. Another person said never. And again, this is the standard for most women growing up. You don't get the conversation of how to handle your money. There is a group of women, Black Women on Code, who every week they have really good collaborative content. They do a lot of, rooms and Clubhouse for Black women specifically to help them to navigate through not just Clubhouse, but life in general, going through the issues that Black women in this society are going through. And we do sometimes go on there and have a conversation about finance. And it always amazes me when I have a conversation with this, very well-established group of Black women, Black and brown women. And, a lot of the things that we talk about, it's the first time they're hearing it, and that's, again, not their fault. Society does not teach women the same way it teaches men. And that is a blind spot that we can fix if we know to look for it, right? So the goal is we have to know to look for those blind spots. We've got to know that at the end of the day, whether it's you're raising a young king or a young queen or whatever you're raising, you've got to teach your daughters about money. You got to teach your sons about compassion. You got to teach your daughters about how to pick and select the right men and not end up in a situationship with someone who doesn't see your value or your worth. You got to teach your men to go find quality women who aren't just here for the bag, but are here for the actual development of your personhood. There are a lot of qualities that we have to look at developing and instilling in our children. And it starts with them being developed and instilled in you as a person. So you've got to be able to be ready for these types of conversations within yourself, so that when you are raising kids or when you are looking for a partner, these are conversations that are going to be standard you're going to have. So today is 7/7, July 7th, which is, double sevens. So I wanted to find some information for you guys about how to look at that number and make it work. So I have an article here, and I think you're going to enjoy this. Let's see here. Okay. 7 tips for couples. Okay. So this is specifically for folks in relationships. If that is not you, just take note, because I think everyone's goal should be able to find love, because love is a beautiful thing. So let's just, take notes on this, right? So the first tip is be honest with each other about money. And that is usually a very difficult thing to do in the beginning, because a lot of folks like to cap, as they say, or lie about their situation. But to be honest, you have to be comfortable with yourself. If you don't have a huge savings account, don't lie about it with your partner or the person you're trying to, have a relationship with long term. Let that be known up front and say, hey, listen, this is something that I'm working on, and it's an area that I'm passionate about, but right now I'm not there yet. You want to be able to start having conversations about money that are honest, because the further along you get into that relationship, it's going to be important for you to be able to know where you're beginning. In any relationship, knowing where you're starting is the most important part, so that you can build off of that, right? So the article says, keeping financial problems hidden can impede your plans and potentially hurt your relationship. This is from the NorthAmericanCompany.com. I can attach this. I'll attach all the links at the bottom of this live, so you'll have it access. 7 tips for couples. So be honest with each other about money. That's the first tip. The second tip is brainstorm your financial priorities together. Now, we were just talking about when women were introduced to finances. Some were at the age of 30, some were a lot later in life. If you are looking to get into, being financially free, well, you need to start thinking about what we got to pay off. What debts do we have? Do we own our own businesses? Do we want to travel a lot? Do we want to save for retirement? All of these things are financial priorities that need to be discussed as a couple. So before you discuss it as a couple, you should know this for yourself going in. Right? So all of these things that they're saying is tips for couples, this is really tips for yourself. As a person going into the position to wanting to be in a relationship, you should know what your financial priorities are. You should know when you want to retire, how much money you make, how much debt you have, what your plan is to get rid of the debt, what your plan is to buy a home, what your plan is to, get your business off the ground. All of these are things that are financial priorities that you have to understand. And now when you add another person to the mix, their needs and their wants and their ideas of things have to be added into that equation as well. So it becomes a really cool collaboration, again, female energy, on how to make your priorities stick. Very important. The third goal, or the third tip, is to track your spending together. Now, I know there are a lot of men out there who like to spend on nice things. I know a lot of women like to spend on nice things as well. But being able to track how you're spending is very important, because for any financial budget, right? Knowing what you have to spend and what you can spend allows you to maximize your finances and maximize your money in a way that's going to be beneficial for you in the long term. If you don't know what's going out, how do you know what you're going to save or what you're going to keep? The groundwork for finance is having a very good nest egg. So you have to be able to fine tune that by understanding exactly what expenses you have on a monthly basis and how are you going to track that. So for me personally, I have an Excel spreadsheet. All of my monthly expenses go on there. All of my monthly income goes on there, and I just look at the two go together. And whatever is left is considered my free capital. I can use that to either invest or to put into my savings or to put into my business, whatever have you. So that is number 1, 2, 3. Track your spending together. Number 4, discuss and create accounts. So this talks about sharing money. And now this is a very sensitive thing, because not a lot of folks want to actually combine accounts with their partners, their spouses, for fear of divorce or fear of, that relationship not working out. I wouldn't recommend it for folks who are dating, but at the same time, if you're dating someone and you see that as someone that you're going to be with for a long time and you're investing in them and you want to marry them one day, for me, I don't like to adjust how I move. So if I'm dating you and I really like you, I'm going to invest in you and with you because my goal is for this to work, not for it to fail. So for that to be the case, my thing is discuss accounts and say, hey, listen, if we became an item, would you want to have an account with me? Would you want to have something where we can both put our money together in a way where we're raising funds for a goal, whether it's a wedding goal, whether it's buying a first home goal, whether it's buying, or starting a business together, being able to kind of interact in that way with your partner actually brings you closer together, because now it's not just you doing it. It's not just you doing all the heavy lifting. You actually now have a person who can help you with the heavy lifting, and they're all bought in. They're headed. They're heading in the same direction that you're heading in. So that's a very critical thing. So that was number 4. So first one is be honest with each other. Number 2 is brainstorm your financial priorities together. Number 3 is track your spending together. Number 4 is discuss and create accounts. Number 5 is work together to save money. So if you're Christian, you know about tithing, 10%. If you're not Christian, you've heard about giving money and saving money, hopefully. And if not, well, save 10%. Discussing how to save is really important, because there are couples who you may have one person that is really good at saving, another person that's really good at spending, or one person who's really good at investing, one person who's horrible at saving anything, right? When you both understand that your capital together is a combination of the efforts of both parties, and this is, again, not about gender, about characteristics now. Whoever's a good saver should be the one responsible for helping both save well. In my relationship, I like to always venture on the side of whoever the expert is. So my wife is really good at saving money. I'm good at investing money. So when it comes to savings, I always rely on her to save. When it comes to investing, I'll be the one to take the risk and throw money in certain things to see if it's going to work. Because again, in our situation, the gender role is that I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive than she is when it comes to finances. So where she maybe not be comfortable taking a risk or taking an investment in something, I'm jumping head in, because I know, okay, even if I fail, at least my partner has a good savings habit. So at least we're not going to be destitute, right? And that's kind of the way you got to look at it. Play to the strengths of your specific relationship. If you are good with, taking risks, and you are not afraid to take risks, and you want to see future assets grow, be that person in the relationship and encourage your partner to see you through and help you through that, right? So that you guys can both grow in that way together. And if your partner is really good at saving and you're horrible at it, well, have them kind of be in charge of, okay, well, here's our savings goal, and kind of rely on them to kind of teach you what they learned or how they got to where they are. Because all of us have had our own individual experiences when it comes to finances, when it comes to our lives. And if you're able to mirror that, or even share that with your spouse, your partner, your potential partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever, you're going to find that you're building something that's going to be better afterwards than before. And that's really the key. What's going on, Mortal Group, Tice, Mansa, Dapper Realtor, what's going on? Creative Flower, Banger Cutie, Vulgarity, Original, Inspire, what's up? Aunt Bev, how you doing? All right. Mortal Group, Babs De Niro, what's going on, brother? Long time. All right. So the final one out of the 7 is, the final 2 out of 7 is number 6 is discuss finances together regularly. We call this the check-in, right? So try scheduling a financial meeting once a month to discuss your financial situation, your goals, and your status on achieving them. If you're having money troubles, brainstorm solutions together. Discussing money may not always be comfortable, but taking the time to talk finances with your partner on a regular basis will make it easier. Take a walk to coffee shops and make the discussion a part of regular business. This is something that I completely support. You don't have to set up a meeting to have a conversation about your life with your partner or even with yourself. It's about being transparent and being honest. If things are tight, be honest about it and say that they are. If things are difficult, be honest and say that they are. If they're good, be honest and say that they are. But having that dialogue and that check-in allows you as a unit to understand where you are and to even adjust some of the plans. Like, let's say that you had a goal of saving, $10,000 by December, and you're falling short of that, and it's already October. It's like, okay, let's have a conversation. Why do we fall short? What adjustments can we make to get to our goal? If we can't get to it now, how can we adjust for next year so that we can either set our goal more realistically, or we can either add more or spend less to get to the goal because something was the reason why it didn't work out, right? So that's, again, another really important aspect of the relationship. And it also helps to build that trust amongst your partner and yourself. You can trust them to be honest and to be open and transparent. And the last one, which I think is the first one, this is number 7. Assign responsibilities for finances. Let me break that down. It says creating a structure for handling finances will make it easier to ensure your money is in order and encourages teamwork. Take some time to figure out who should be responsible for paying bills, balancing accounts, monitoring credit, and researching large purchases like a house or a car. You do not. Do you want to do it as a team or as an individual? Do you want to divide the tasks up? It starts by navigating this conversation. So being able to kind of assign responsibilities, I think, is literally the first thing that you should do in a relationship, not the last. Because when everyone knows what their responsibilities are, it's not about gender roles anymore. It's about, well, if you're responsible for buying food and I'm responsible for paying insurance, we both have our divided tasks and we can then use our energies to make sure that is accomplished. And by doing that, you're now allowing 4 hands to work on something that maybe just 2 hands are working on, which makes the most amount of sense when it comes to being in a successful relationship. So assigning responsibilities to me is amazing and it's important and it's always overlooked because, again, folks sometimes don't understand that that is the biggest way to fail if you do not do that. Like if you do not assign tasks, you're setting yourself up for failure because your team doesn't know exactly what the playbook is. Imagine going to a football game and you don't have an offensive playbook or play calling sheet. Your team's going to lose aggressively. All right. So along with the 7 that they spoke on, I have a different 6 that I think are just as important. So I'll just go into them as just notes. If you're writing this down, hope you are. I'm going to attach at the bottom. The first one is set expectations around these areas and figure out what roles work best regarding these subjects. So saving, investing, safety, which is both physical and emotional, who pays the rent and mortgage, nurturing and emotional intelligence, who's responsible for adding that level of protection and safety around the minds of those in your family, in your household, in your relationship. Edification, sometimes there are folks who are whose self-esteem may not be there. So it's like, whose role is it to encourage and support and uplift the other person? I think both people should be doing this. And again, all of these things are open to, if I am that person in the relationship, at least I can bring that in a conversation with my partner, let them know, hey, by the way, I'm a good saver. So, if you want to join me in savings, that's great, but I can definitely take the lead on that. These are just conversation starters because, again, the expectations around these areas are the most important thing. The second set of notes that I put here is leave room for fluidity between all subjects. So the male and the masculine and feminine energy has different characteristics amongst them, right? But what I'm suggesting is there should be an ability for folks to go through each one, as the masculine energy. If you want to be very goals driven and assertive, that's great. But then if your partner, who is a woman, and wants to be that way, she should be allowed to do that. Not even allowed, she should be encouraged to do that, because again, we don't need the gender norms to dictate how we move, but we do need them to understand which characteristics we want to attach to our relationships, right? If I'm going to be very assertive and then my wife is very assertive, well, then who's really going to win that, right? So there has to be a level of empathy involved in every conversation. And if it's not me giving it, it's got to be her giving it, right? And there's got to be a level of assertiveness in the conversations as well. So it's just like knowing your partner, knowing how to balance that out is going to be really important. But leaving room for that is really key. The ability to tap in to both masculine and feminine traits, but we often settle into social norms instead of getting uncomfortable and learning new traits that help create a better overall environment of quality. So that's one of the things that, again, we got to really look at that. The next one that I have on here is invest based on time, not gender. What do I mean by that? So we were talking about most women don't really learn about investments until they have a job. And then they get taught that by hopefully the financial advisor comes to their office or someone that they're talking to at work. But usually it's not a conversation they have growing up. The reason why men make more money than women in the beginning of investing is because they start before them and they invest a lot more aggressively than women, right? That's literally how it works, because women are more safe creatures. They're not here to take a lot of unnecessary risks. Point in case, for the men on the call, I'll say, do you find anything wrong or scary about inviting a woman over to your place after having drinks? Most men would say no. What's scary about that? She's a woman, she wants to come over, might lead something else. Okay, not a scary thing. If I ask the same question to women and say, hey, do you find it that it could be scary to invite a man over to your home after drinks? They'll have a different response to that. And why is that? Well, because 90% of violent crimes are done by men. So it's a lot less safe for a woman to invite a man over after drinks than it would be for a man to invite a woman over after drinks, right? To his place. Because again, If this man is not stable or something can be wrong with him, that could turn into an altercation. That can be physical. That could be a sexual abuse situation. That could be violent. It could be traumatic. All those things can happen if a man is rejected and he's not really mentally there. So because of this natural idea that women are a lot more forward thinking when it comes to safety, that plays a role in their finances as well. That plays a role in how they invest. And I want women to understand that you don't have to invest based on that. You can invest based on something that's a little bit more systematic. So it's not about my gender or my characteristics that are associated with femininity. It's going to be about what makes sense in the investment land. And what makes sense in the investment land is looking at how much time you have. There's something called an investor questionnaire. If you're on our YouTube, I'm going to put this into the YouTube stream. So essentially, Vanguard has a retirement plan investor questionnaire. And I'm going to read off the questions of this questionnaire so that you can understand that you just need to know what the tools are and how to invest regardless of your gender so that you can get the most out of your investments and you know where you're starting. So the first question they ask is, I plan to begin taking money from my investments in less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, or more than 15 years. That is the most important question when it comes to how aggressive you can be in your financial portfolio. Doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. If you have more than 5 years, you can be very aggressive. Mainly because the market usually rebounds every 10 years, but 5 years, you don't have to be extremely conservative. You have time to earn some interest. I think last year, my portfolio at work earned 46% return last year, okay? And a regular portfolio at work, same with mutual fund, earned 26. I was very aggressive. I invested in international stocks. I invested in small cap and mid cap. That was pretty much the three things I invested in, where most people will invest in a moderate portfolio. And my returns were double. Why? Because I wasn't afraid of losing anything up front. I knew I had time. I'm not retiring for 30 years. So if the market goes down this week, if it goes on next week, if it goes on next year, I don't care. I'm just going to keep putting more money into it and buying these shares at a low cost. Whereas women, when they go into the market, they see, well, let me just test the waters out. I'm not really comfortable with this. Let me go with something conservative or something, moderate, because I don't want to lose money. And you end up losing money because instead of being 46%, you only earn 26%, right? So that is one of the things that no matter what your gender is, it's really important that you find out what is appropriate for you. That has nothing to do with whether you're a man or a woman, but more to do with your goals and objectives. The second question they have is, when making long-term investments, I plan to keep the money invested for, and then it goes through the same timeframes again, from 1 year to more than 8 years. Again, these are all questions that will determine the type of investment strategy you have. If it's more than 5 years, more than 10 years, you're allowed to be extremely aggressive. If it's less than that, then you should be somewhat conservative. When making long-term investments, I plan to keep my money invested for, we've read that, from September 8th through November 8th, stocks lost over 31%. If I owned a stock investment that lost 31% in 3 months, I would, 1, sell all of the remaining investments, 2, sell some of the remaining investments, 3, hold on to the investments and sell them and sell nothing, or 4, buy more of the investments. Now, these are the 4 categories that literally will determine aggressive, moderate, conservative, and somewhere in between. If you, in that scenario, you lost 31%, if you're the kind of person that buys more or invests more, you're an aggressive person. Now, if you have more than 10 years, you should be that person. Everyone should be that person with more than 10 years if you're investing your money, just because it makes sense. It is the right thing to do when you have time. Now, if you, and again, most people, if you're afraid, you sell off your investments because, let's say you're afraid and your account drops by 31% and you sell. The moment you sell that stock or that portfolio or those investments, you have accepted the loss of 31%. In finance, they say never accept that loss unless you have to, which means continue to remain invested because stocks do this. They go up and they go down. If you invest when it's on a down, that means that when it bounces back up, which it typically has done since the beginning of the stock market, you're not going to get any of those gains. And someone else is going to get what you left on the table. Think of it this way. It's like, you ever invested in someone who had the potential to be really, really amazing, and then you invest time into them, and then they have an emotional breakdown, they turn into a very depressed person, whatever have you. but you see that they have really good qualities and you want to kind of keep them. You're like, listen, if I could just get through this tough time with you and see you on the other side, I know that you're going to be a great person. And then you say, you know what? You cancel that relationship, you cancel that person, you say, oh, I'm done with you. And then you turn out 10 years later and they own a Fortune 500 company. If you had just waited and rode through the downtime with that person, got them through the other side, and were able to grow and elevate with them, you would have been the person in that relationship. And there are many people who look back and they say like the white buffalo, the one that got away, all of that stuff. That's kind of the same logic with people as we're talking about with investments, right? You don't want to be the person that looks back and says, I wish that I had done something different to gain, this person back, or to gain these stocks back that now grew to, $1 million portfolio. That's the thing about stocks. You don't want to accept a loss unless it's an absolute must. If your portfolio is down, if you have time, that's your opportunity to invest more into it. Point blank and simple. That's not even gender specific. That's just stock specific. Just one-on-one with stocks. The next question is, when the market goes down, I tend to sell some of my riskier investments and put money in safer investments. Again, this is sort of like, you're not completely selling out of the market. You're kind of putting your money into a safer bet, but you're still accepting the loss. And if that's who you are, again, ask yourself, are you being that way because you're just not aggressive and you're afraid and you don't have knowledge about how the market works? Or are you doing that because you think it's the best thing to do for your financial goal? See, when you think about being goals driven, which is a masculine trait, everyone should be goals driven, period, point blank. If your goal is to have a certain amount of money in retirement, if you invest it in an account that's going to grow with less interest, how does that serve you? How does that serve your goal? So it takes away the gender aspect of that characteristic and put it into an actual practical aspect, which is, if I want to save a certain amount of money and invest a certain amount of money and get a certain level of return, it's important that I invested in a stock portfolio that's going to give me that. You have to kind of just take the emotions out of it and be very systematic about it. The last question I'll show you is, when it comes to investing in stocks or bonds, bond mutual funds, I would describe myself as very inexperienced, somewhat experienced, very experienced. Again, this goes into the beginning conversation we had. We have to teach not only our kids, but the community, our parents sometimes, your partner, how to invest money, the purpose behind investing money. This is not about male and female or masculine and feminine energy. This is about knowledge, right? So the gender role aspect of this conversation is very simple. Like, there's no real place for the gender role, but there's a place for the characteristics behind each of the positive characteristics of each gender. They both matter. You cannot tell me that you are a successful man and you have no compassion. Compassion is technically a feminine energy, but as a man, if you don't have compassion, you're not exercising all of the qualities that you should have. Because again, when you have children, you've got to show a level of compassion for your kids. That's just a level of love that you want them to experience. So we need to take these ideals and make sure that they're going to work for us in our relationship. And I'm a man, I identify as a man, all of these things. I'm going to hold true to all of the masculine qualities that are positive, and I'm going to add in all of the feminine qualities that don't counteract with my masculine qualities, of course, but the ones that actually I need to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to be caring, to be nurturing. Those are things that I'm not going to let women own that. Like I'm going to take some of that for myself because it is useful and it is a part of who we are as humans. We have to have the aspects of both and blend them in a way that's going to make sense. But let's not do this thing where we don't respect that part of a person's character. And I think that that's where the final part of this conversation will go, where it is, at the end of the day, we are all here to find happiness, to find hopefully someone to spend your life with, build something with that person, build a family, build, whatever it is that you want to build with them, right? That's the end of goal. And if that's not where you are and you're kind of self-driven and you don't really care about building anything, well, then that's good for you. This conversation is not for you, right? But for everyone else who sees value in growth, sees value in building, it's important that you recognize that you have to acknowledge the things that you are not. If you're not sensitive, acknowledge that. If you're not forward thinking, acknowledge that. If you're going to be in a relationship with somebody and you don't even know your negative qualities, you haven't done your own work. And the thing is, people have to check in because you change. Everyone changes. Like when you start in a relationship and when you are going through it, there are two different people. Like you're not the same person you were a year ago. Look at what COVID did to us. We don't even talk to each other. We don't hug people. We don't hang out at people's houses. Like all it took was 12 months of being in a pandemic, and everyone's changed. Look at your kids. They're not socialized. They don't know how to handle interactions with each other. They're on web cameras all day, 24/7. Don't know how to actually make a joke in real life, in real time with people. It doesn't take a lot to kind of throw off the natural order of things. It's very easy to do it. But in being aware of who you are, it's important that you check in with yourself. Ask yourself, what qualities do I possess? And what qualities am I not as good in that I need to work on? Because I think if you are looking at masculine and feminine as just an entire circle of characteristics that are positive, which ones will apply and make my relationship better? I think that's a more positive conversation than trying to say, well, there's something as toxic masculinity or toxic femininity and this, that, and the third, toxic this, toxic that. That's one of the number one words of 2021 was toxic, and then whatever afterwards. I don't believe in toxic relationships when it comes to gender. And I want to clarify what I mean by that. You can be toxic, period. That's not a gender thing. There's just toxic people and people that aren't toxic. And it shows itself in different ways. If you're a man, being toxic shows itself in a certain way based on how society has raised you. Being a woman, toxicity shows itself in a certain way based on how society has raised you. Cool. But you are toxic. Let's not get rid of let's get rid of the ends and start with the beginning. If you're a toxic person, how do you stop from being toxic? Ask yourself, are these characteristics that I want to have? Are these things that I want to be? And if it is, well, then keep on being toxic and you'll probably be single for the rest of your life. If you want to be better, though, ask yourself, what traits do I need to add to my current traits that will help me not be that way? If you're very strong-minded, but you're not compassionate, well, try to add some compassion. If you are very, reserved and meek, but you don't really know how to speak up for yourself, well, try to be a little bit more assertive and stand up for yourself when you can. Practice that. Find people who will give you the space to grow yourself into who you want to become. Because at the end of the day, it's a choice to be that way. You are choosing to be something, whether or not you like it or not. If you choose to be toxic, then that's a choice. If you choose to be caring, then that's a choice. If you choose to have conversations that don't have any meaning or merit, but you just want to say your piece and that's it, that's your choice. But ask yourself, in a relationship, how is that going to help you? Especially if you're building something with someone else. So for me, one of the things that I love to do and I love to do is grow every single day. There's something called Kaizen, continuous growth. And that's a Japanese terminology. And I like it because if you are constantly redefining yourself every day and trying to learn and grow and become a better version of yourself, you're going to be in the right place when it comes to finances. Because again, you're going to look at all of the places that you weren't positive or weren't good for you the previous year, and you're going to find ways to improve upon them in the current year. So my advice to you is this: do the work for yourself, first and foremost. And then from there, ask yourself, if I want to include somebody into this journey with me, what traits are going to be important for me to have in a partner that are going to complement what I'm already doing, or that are going to, give me the extra boost to be a better version of myself? If you're an unorganized person, finding someone who's organized is like a boost. If you are a super nurturing person, finding someone who is a protector is a boost. Because again, if you have someone that's protecting you and you're able to be in your nurturing element, then you can just be yourself and not have to worry about outside noise. Like there are qualities in both the masculine and feminine energies that matter in a relationship. Figure out what yours are. No matter what your gender identity is, figure out what your traits are that you possess and ask yourself, if I'm looking for somebody, how do I find someone that's going to be able to complement these traits? So that is basically the conversation. And I know it was a long-winded one, and I know we didn't talk about a stock pick. We didn't talk about the market. We didn't talk about, the economy so much. It was just more about looking at each and every one of our relationships and looking at how finance plays a role in the traits between the masculine and feminine energy, right? Men are usually aggressive. That's just one of them. One of the things that I read was actually talking about women CEOs. And I'll end off with this because this is like, you want to end on something high, on a high note. So, and I'll share my screen on this because this is amazing. Women are crushing life right now. So Fortune 500 CEOs grouped together by gender. So in 2000, there were only 2 CEOs that were women. In 2004, there were 8. In 2010, there were 15. And these are Fortune 500 CEOs. In 2016, there were 21. In 2018, there were 24. Not a lot of change between 14 and 18. In 2021, broke a record. There are 41 women CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies. So understand this, men. You've had a good run. 459 CEOs are men. 41 are women. My thing is, there needs to be a change, and it's happening. And the reason why it's happening is because companies are now understanding that the quality of the work environment matters. And when you're in a masculine-driven society with masculine-driven tendencies, you tend to burn out workers and not care about the actual quality of the experience, as opposed to if you have that feminine energy, you're going to come in and nurture those relationships, nurture those people that work for you. Understand that the quality of life actually matters just as much as the bottom line. You know, it's no longer just about the goal and objective. It's about getting everyone there at the same time with the right attitude and outlook. So there are things that now are coming to fruition, and you're going to see more of this trend. This trend is not going to slow down or stop. But what I want women to understand is that it only stops when you start incorporating the things that you weren't taught as girls in your journey. Earlier, the better. And if you help other women to find that same balance, if you have a great portfolio, teach that to your sisters, teach that to your friends at work, teach that to people who are with you, because the more you teach them as women, woman to woman, the more encouragement they're going to see. And that's going to even out the scales because they're completely lopsided. When I was working in finance, I think we only had 8% of our advisors were women out of like 100%, 8% were women. It's like, they weren't even out there doing that. And it's like, they're more than eligible and capable, but they weren't given the opportunity. So for me, it's important that we start putting the genders aside and allowing for the conversation to be about what qualities does each person possess, which characteristics actually will improve not just that person's, outlook, but their living situation, their financial situation, their relation situation, and add that in. Regardless of what energy it is, we both are comprised of X and Y chromosomes, which means that we both have the ability to do either things that both genders' characteristics show. Granted, men are physically stronger, but women are more nurturing and loving and caring and forgiving. So there is a balance that happens between the genders that we need to not fight and just allow for us to be able to come together. Because my thing is, this is 2021. We cannot keep trying to make it seem as if it's a man versus woman. It's, maleness versus femaleness, or whatever the terms that these people are using. We can't go down that road. We have to become aware that no matter what it is that we want in this life, it's going to require energies from both sides. It's going to require an understanding of both sides. It's going to require developing yourself to be both sides, because that is the key to being able to have a cohesive family unit, which hopefully if you're trying to build that, you're going to have to know how to do both sides. Just a thing. All right. So any questions, comments on Bev? That was great. I'm grateful for the information you shared. Oh, thank you. Can't wait to share this with my fiance. Yeah. If you're in a marriage or a relationship or fiancé-ship, definitely share it. The goal for this conversation was really to talk to those folks and couples and single individuals who, just don't really have conversations like this with each other, because, it's one of those things where no one talks about it. We just struggle by ourselves instead of having a conversation about why are we letting society dictate how we move? Why aren't we using something that's a little bit more strategic? So for me and for my family, it's important for us to continue to be in strategies at all times. If I'm good at something, my wife lets me run with that. If she's good with something, I'll let her run with that. If we're both good, we decide who wants to run with that. Who's more open to wanting to do this? Who wants to be responsible for this? That's who's going to run it. If none of us want to do it, then I just pick it up. Because I'm like, at the end of the day, it's going to fall on me if it's going to fall. And I'm not going to let anything fall. So that's how it kind of works in our household. But again, to each their own. Everyone's going to have their way of dealing with things. But for me, the goal is that it's a conversation. The goal is that it's something that you discuss. You figure out who you are in your relationship, who you want to be in your relationship. And just, again, kumbaya that bad boy. Make it work. All right. So, folks, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be on Clubhouse at 10 o'clock instead of 9:30, just because there is another room for Team 144K. They have a room right now that's in progress, so I don't want to impede on that room. So if you are around and you want to kind of have a more robust conversation around this topic of gender and finance, we can have that discussion on Clubhouse. So until then, I will see you all on Clubhouse at 10 o'clock. And yeah, catch us wherever you want to catch us, bro, on YouTube, wherever. Catch us where you want to catch us. Appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you later. All right, adios. All right, YouTube, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you guys on Clubhouse. All right, later.